What's up, y'all? This is Raheem Rivers, aka Raheem the Revolutionary, and today we're going to talk about why ignorance is obsolete. Ignorance is obsolete is a philosophy of mine that I've turned into an initiative because I believe pretty much all of the challenges humanity faces going forward have intelligent solutions that either haven't been explored or haven't been adequately invested in. Being a community organizer and activist, one of the biggest challenges that I see that we still haven't tried to truly solve is the justice system. Though it is called the Department of Justice, anyone who's paying attention can tell that justice isn't really its number one concern. Ever since like when the first few slaves were freed and they started rearresting them and sending them right back to the plantations, they had vagrancy laws back then. It basically meant you didn't have a job. Uh, so you got freed slaves, just got freed, right? Only places they could work is for the people who had enslaved them, right? And those people wouldn't give them a job because if they got pulled over, quote unquote, by the police and they didn't have proof that they had a job, then they'd go to jail and the jail would just send them right back to the plantation. So it's a trap basically. Like the only people you could get the job from are the same people who can enslave you for free, using the justice quote unquote system to do it. And those were the vagrancy laws, right? And that's like right after slavery ended. So that's how far back this bullshit goes. Uh, and from there, one of the things that you got to notice is that there is a vested interest in the incarceration of the people by the state because it gives them cheap slash free labor for the state, and that's why like now our our criminal justice system or the prison industrial complex has become such a profitable business that people are building private prisons and suing states for not keeping them full. In addition to this, you have the criminalization of minority communities through gangs and drugs. Um, it's like everybody knows, like when you're watching TV and so forth, like all the stories, the images they use to depict non-white people, basically anybody who's not European. They try to cast a shadow on, or they try to degrade in some way, and they've been doing that for years as well. And from the like gangs and the drugs, they create these laws like the three strike law, or the drug laws are like a real big one for the amount of incarceration that is created and the impact that those not only the drugs but the prison sentences have had on our communities in terms of preventing us from being able to advance um, out of the gutter, out of this systematic trap that the colonialists have set up. Because what it does is it creates second class citizens. Like once someone has been convicted of a felony, you can't get certain jobs, right? You can't get into certain colleges. You can't live in certain places. Like there's a lot of doors that get slammed in your face, and they won't say it's because your color or so on and so forth. It's because of your criminal record. Yeah, you're an ex-felon, so we don't have to hire you type crap. And what this does is it traps people in the gutter, basically, like because you can't get housing anywhere else. Like the apartments and all of that, the high rises they build in, you can't get into there. Them people ain't gonna let you in with a felony. You know what I mean? And the jobs, the decent ones, the ones that actually pay a livable wage, something better than retail or warehouse work, they're not gonna hire you because you're a felon. So what do you have left, but the struggle, but to nickel and dime and try to climb your way out without getting caught up in another trap or another case is really counterproductive. If you're trying to create a just society, right, where humans can reach their potential, setting up all these barriers and boundaries to people achieving success isn't actually in the best interest of the government unless you are purposefully oppressing and attempting to destroy certain people, certain citizens within the government, which is pretty much what the justice system has been doing for years now. It seems to be more focused on controlling the people rather than liberating them and protecting their rights. Like, why would you have a war on drugs rather than a war on property? And part of that, like if you look at it, look at things like hemp, for instance, right? Hemp, which is marijuana, was actually legal in America. It's one of its biggest early industries. And they made it illegal by tying it to Mexicans. They said Mexicans were smuggling it over and all this and that. And so they wanted a way to demonize Mexicans and to put them in prison. And they used marijuana as a means to do such. Um, Even though like marijuana was an industry in America at the same time. And that's the Justice Department that we're dealing with. Now we have all of these mandatory minimums and all of that uh, that came out of the like Clinton era. And Clinton, like they make it seem like the Democrats were this like super party to help us or whatever, but the laws they passed back then locked a lot of people up for a lot of time, and it was calculated. It was done on purpose to remove a lot of the men from our communities, which basically made it to where the women and children had to depend on the government a lot more. That's that control I'm talking about. Um, and they had to basically find ways to try to survive without us. So they divided the family and targeted specifically the men. And in doing so, they made it a lot harder for the women. Because like if a woman has two, three kids and her man's in prison, how's she gonna survive? What's that doing to the kids? And this is like done on purpose to basically every community that's quote unquote non-white in America, and is done like systematically through the justice system, uh, and is pretty much just an addition, another aspect of white supremacy that the European colonialists brought with them. Because like a lot of people don't know, but race was actually created by a German anthropologist in the 1700s. If you look at history, you won't find anybody identifying themselves as a color like a crayon before the 1700s. Everybody had nationalities. Humans have nationalities. It's just solely and just say Quintus. Just solely is the right of soil. Just say Quintus is the right of blood. And basically, a nationality is the soil that your blood comes from. So, like, people aren't brown, for instance, they would be Mexican, or they would be Puerto Rican, or they would be Cuban. Those are nationalities. See what I'm saying? People aren't white, quote unquote. They're actually British or they're Irish. Um, and so forth. You know what I mean? And the European colonialists used this color code system as a way to break people away from their true identity, their history, their heritage, and instill white supremacy. Because like if you look at America by itself, the original definition of an American was a copper skinned person. The colonialists didn't start calling themselves Americans until the Revolutionary War with Britain. Because like back then they were still colonies. So like if you were from Virginia, you were Virginian, whatever. People rep that. They didn't rep America itself. America was the copper skinned people were Americans. And then the Europeans adopted that as an effort to unify the 13 colonies to help them come together and fight the British Empire. They began calling themselves American, uh, which is crazy because now, if you look at all of these government identifications. You got like African American, you got Mexican American, you got Native American, Asian American, but there's no European American. Even though like pretty much everybody else was already here before Christopher Columbus even quote unquote discovered America. And that's part of like all the crap that they tried to shove into this white supremacy, this European colonialist idea that is behind a lot of our government and our judicial system, that creates the hatred that comes from white supremacy. Is why they try so hard to destroy us, and to prevent us from learning who we are and learning our history. Like back then, they were killing people for speaking their native tongues. You know what I mean? Like if you spoke your original language, they kill them. Or if you learned how to read, they kill them. Like anything that you could do to help free your people from the control of the colonialists, they try and destroy you, kill you, burn books, all of that crap. And it's kind of like what's still going on. They're just doing it through the government, like with the judicial system. You know what I mean? And it's in the financial institutions. It's in the educational system. It's all over, and it's all based on ignorance. Because like if you look at racism, right? Um, One fact, right? People who call themselves white aren't actually white. Like they're not even really white. If you took something white, put it next to them, shit's not white, bro. Black people aren't actually black. Yellow people aren't yellow. Like it's a bunch of bullshit on that front. Beyond that, in terms of race, scientifically speaking, is a species, and anything that if two kinds can cohabitate and reproduce, then they are considered the same race. Which means like we have different kinds of humans, but human is our actual race because like we can all pretty much cohabitate and reproduce. As we've seen like throughout history, like interracial quote unquote relationships go past Greece in history. So that part is bullshit. And the real reason, the motivating factor behind why they instill this racist identity and try to rewrite history in such a way is to divide and conquer the natives, and to instill white supremacy. That was the whole focus. The color code system that the German cat cooked up. I can't think of his name right now. I'll probably add it on the video or in the footnotes or whatever. But it had the white people, quote unquote, were considered the ruling class. They had non-whites in the middle, and then they had black on the bottom. Um, and truthfully, these were made up definitions that were used to uh, establish the colonialists' power in the territories that they invaded. That's the whole basis for racism. It's like all bullshit. And that's why I call it ignorance. It has no scientific or no like true value. It's just a bunch of lies that have been perpetuated throughout history with violence and hatred and more ignorance. And now, as we're coming into 2023, right? We just had Tyree Nichols. He was beat to death by police officers who look like him. You know what I mean? That's another part of it too. Like people act like all black people or all white people or all brown people are this or that. You know what I mean? Like one group of person is good and everybody else is bad. But there's good and bad from all walks of life, from every nationality, every religion, every sexual orientation. Like none of that really defines your quality as a person. What defines it is the content of your character, your complexion, and all these other superficial things really have no true value in defining who you are. So now that we understand that, how do we take all of this ignorance, these antiquated ideologies, and remove them from our society so that we can actually create something that allows everyone to thrive? so that liberty and justice for all can become a reality rather than just an idea or some pretty words people say. No, and that is where ignorance is obsolete comes in. I believe that one of the primary ways we can change the direction America is going in is if we focus a lot more of our energy and efforts on removing white supremacists, neo Nazis, and other hateful individuals from public office, preventing them from being able to be police officers or to be in the armed forces. Why? Because those are all positions of power that they have been using and abusing to abuse the American people. So first we need to draft a law, a federal law that actually bars them, and then a way for us to enact that law to make sure that when there's people uh, who are enemies among us, we can remove them from those positions. And that will allow us to pass more just laws. That will allow us to have conversations that matter in terms of education curriculums and in terms of policing laws. Like all of this stuff is being stopped by the white supremacists, the old guard that's still trying to hold on to power. The MAGA people who pretend that MAGA wasn't racist. Like, well, no, we're trying to make America great. Uh, but at the same time, like they're doing all these Klan like dog whistles, and like Charlottesville. What did Trump say? They're good people on both sides. Like one group just showed up to instill hate and fear and try to terrorize the American people. And he says those are good people. Like how is he even eligible to run for office? Like we should have been impeaching him then. You know what I mean? Like these people have no business in government. They have no business in police uniforms. They have no business in the armed forces. They have like no value for the American government or the American people. They're basically representative of the problems we're trying to solve. In addition to removing the hateful and the ignorant from offices of honor, I believe we also need to start doing our own research. We need to start educating our own children, like the DeSantos spiel where he's blocking the AP African American Studies. That's been happening for years now. They've been banning books, they've been burning books, they've been doing all of that, and we keep looking to the government to teach our children when that should be us. Like we should be coming together and building our own private schools. We should be building our own libraries, our own resources for our people, independent of the government. Which I believe personally is a part of a republic. Like the people are supposed to have a certain amount of responsibility and taking care of themselves instead of just relying on the government to do everything for us. Because at that point, you're no longer independent, but you're dependent upon the government. You see what I'm saying? So it's counterproductive to keep trying to fight with the states. Like we're gonna do all these marches and stuff in Florida when we could take that same energy, that same effort, and we could just build our own private school and teach our kids ourselves. You know what I mean? So that's step two, and how we move past the ignorance of America's history. And beyond that, it's kind of like a rinse and repeat with all of the problems we have. Like within our communities. We need to be creating our own solutions. We need to stop looking to the like mayor or the governor or whoever uh, to solve our problems and start looking at each other. Like we the people are the power. We are what make the government. You see what I'm saying? All these offices of honor and so forth are our offices. Those are our chairs. Those are people that we elect to represent us. We're what matters. And until we understand that and we act in that way, we're going to continue to be basically misled and oppressed. by those that we continue to give our power to rather than embracing our power, embracing who we are, what we're capable of, and working together towards creating our own solutions that we own, that we control, and that we can use as we see fit to liberate and improve our situation. And that's basically the ignorance is obsolete ideology in a nutshell. And this petition that I'm running is I want to get this to a federal level to where like we actually pass a law that bans all these neo Nazis and members of hate groups and all of that from actually obtaining power positions in our government and in our police forces, our communities, any of that. Like that's the first thing is that they have to go. All this hatred, all this antiquated ideology, the ignorance has to go. It's over. That shit's done with. And if you believe, like I believe, that ignorance is obsolete, then I would like for you to sign a petition and consider joining the Riverside Symphony. You could become a member, and we can work together towards creating the solutions we need without having to go through all these middlemen and jump through all of these hoops or deal with all the red tape and restrictions that come with being a 501c3. As independent individuals, we can create our own solutions, which is a part of being American. Like there is no law against us having a private school. You see what I'm saying? There's no law against us policing our own communities. There is no law against us creating our own housing developments. Like this, these are the real solutions that'll create the change we need, rather than continuing to just go to the government. Please do this for us. Please do that for us, and they throw scraps here and there, and then they take them away. Like if you look at the last year or so, we've had all these people fighting for better pay, better wages, and so forth. And there's been a lot of victories. You know, salute to all the union activists out there. Solidarity is extremely important when it comes to the fight for human rights, for humanity. Period. Like solidarity is the key to us being able to come together and create a better future for everyone. But right after we made all these advances, then the IRS and whoever goes and they're like, oh, we're going to adjust the inflation rates and so forth. So houses are now more expensive, cars are now more expensive. So we did all this fighting for them to turn around and just boost the prices on us, you know. So now even though you got boosted up to $20 an hour, the house is going to be an extra 3% on the mortgage rate, you know. So it's just kind of like win for losing. And if we were building our own housing developments, if we were building our own like community banks, if we were building our own resources, our own solutions, then they wouldn't be able to control the outcome as much as they do. We'd be able to control like what we believe is just pay and what we believe is good housing, what we believe is good medicine, you know, good food. Like if you look at the kind of crap that they're feeding us these days, this is going like totally into a whole nother direction, man. Thank you guys for checking out this Ignorance is Obsolete. And check out the Riverside Symphony if you get a chance. God bless you. Goodbye.